Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be working out how to write a canon by diminution. So, canon. This is when one voice begins. It could be the upper voice, could be the lower voice, doesn't really matter. And then a second voice comes in a few beats or a few bars later and copies the same music. Sometimes at the same pitch, sometimes at a different pitch. There are clever things you can do, like inversion and, have canons that go backwards and all sorts of things. But here we're going to think about canon by diminution. So let's be clear what we mean by diminution. It's really talking about the rhythm. And generally speaking, when we talk about diminution, we're talking about halving the rhythmic values of notes. Now, I said this was in two parts. That's what we're going to do in this video. It's perfectly possible to have canon in more than two parts, of course. I'm just restricting this to two parts to kind of explain the technique. So what we're going to do here is one part is going to begin it doesn't really matter which part, but in this example, we're going to begin with the upper part. And then the lower part will come in. In this case, I've already decided that it's going to be 4 bars, 4 measures later. Doesn't matter, it could be something else. And we're going to use the same music that we write in the upper part in the first 4 bars, the first 4 measures. We're going to put that into the lower part from measure 5 with all the values halved. And then we're going to see how this works out. Okay, so let's get writing, and if we are in the key of C minor, let's begin on the tonic C. And because this is a kind of rather longer monophonic statement, it's worth just thinking, can I write something that's going to sound good as a monophonic statement? Or am I going to end up writing something that's going to sound like an unaccompanied melody that really wants to be accompanied? So I'm going to try and write this a little bit like a sort of baroque fugue subject. So it sounds as if this might be a fugue. It doesn't turn out to be, but it might be. But something where you can sort of feel, actually this line sits comfortably on its own. So I'm going to make a kind of slow moving start. Just kind of start creeping up the scale. And then, as often is the case when you have slow moving notes at the beginning of a fugue subject, then we're going to get busy. Okay. One thing I've got to think about as I get busy is the fact that if I'm going to write this in a second part in diminution, and the notes are going to be halved in value, if I've got too many short notes, they're going to get very short. So I'm going to sort of avoid writing 16th notes or semiquavers because they're going to become demi-semiquavers or 32nd notes. That's going to be a bit crazy, isn't it? So it's worth just bearing that in mind. And I'm writing a sort of quicker moving second bar in contrast to the first bar, but all with conjunct movement, so it's all kind of flowing quite nicely, going to a new peak, which in this case is the dominant. Quite often in a fugue subject, you have this kind of sort of tonic dominant polarity thing. Okay, I've got there. We've done a lot of conjunct movement now, so time for a distinctive leap. Well, you're always fairly safe leaping an octave, and so let's do that and repeat it. Let's have a bit of distinctive rhythm. And now let's leap up again. This time a 7th. If you're going to leap up a 7th, you probably want to step back inside that leap. And then just to make it more interesting, I'm going to write a chromatic finish. Okay, so, and also bearing in mind really that F sharp will have to lead to a G. We can determine the length of that G in due course, but that's where it's going to have to go. Okay, what does that sound like? You see, it's got that sort of fugue subject quality to it. And you can imagine, oh, the second voice is going to come in the dominant key now and copy all that. That's what would happen in a fugue. quite a sort of long sort of fugue subject idea, but it's going to have to be something that works on its own. So you see what I mean by that? You could harmonize it, but it works all right on its own. All right, now let's think about what we're doing with this canon by diminution, because what we've now got is this set of 4 bars, 4 measures, and I'm going to put that into the lower part, but I'm going to halve the note lengths. So here was the first note that we had. It had 2 beats, I'm reducing to 1. I'm going to do the same with the second note. And of course, I've already dealt with the first measure, the first bar, because we're halving those values. So I'm now going to get all the notes from the original second bar into this single bar because we're halving the lengths. So now it's the same notes, but we're going to have them as 16th notes, as semiquavers, and continue in the same vein. So this is just a sort of copping out job, but we've just got to think about our note lengths. Let's just carry on doing this. Oops, so that's going to be that, I think, on balance. Their stems are probably going to go this way. Now then, I've got this dotted rhythm, which of course when I do this is going to come out like that. And now I'm already in the 4th bar, the 4th measure, because we've reduced 4 bars to 2. And there we go with those notes to complete the bar. And then we said it needed to lead up to a G, so we'll put a G in there. Okay, so you see what I've done with this. That's the upper part written in diminution in the lower part. So far we've got this. So you see how that works, and suddenly you feel the thing kind of take off a little bit when it's in the lower part. So to some extent in the upper part, we're going to kind of match that, and we're also going to mitigate it. You'll see what I mean in a minute. I want to, in the upper part now, show you that we now need to write what's effectively a free moving part. There's nothing to do with the canon anymore, because by the time we get to the end of the extract on the page, we've copied the upper part. If you're going to carry on, well, obviously the canon then needs to continue. But just in terms of, you know, we've done the canon by diminution, but we've still got empty bars, empty measures in the top part. So if this were to be the end of the piece or the end of the section, you could now write quite freely up here. So I'm going to do this in 16th notes in semiquavers so that it's going to help mitigate the impact of what I just played you. Because when I played you the top part and those first 4 bars and then played the bottom part, you probably thought, oh goodness me, that bottom part suddenly shot off. Well, if I can introduce these 16th notes, these semiquavers in the upper part before they come in the lower part, that's probably going to help. But we don't want it all to be completely manic in 16th notes. So I think what we'll now do is to write a couple of quavers or 8th notes. And then because the left hand of the bass part rather is going to get busy, let's upstairs have a slower moving rhythm. But I'm going to introduce that rhythm. Now, why am I introducing that rhythm? Because it's going to come here. And if we can introduce it in the other voice as well, it sounds more intentional. Okay, so that's that. The lower part is really busy, so let's be fairly steady in the upper part. Now we've had those 16th notes, those semiquavers going. Now the lower part is going to have a slightly slower moving rhythm, so the upper part could afford to get a little bit busy here. I'm thinking about B natural, A natural, because a little bit of melodic minor is being used here. I'm not writing in natural minor, but I don't want to write in harmonic minor and end up with a load of augmented seconds going on between the 6th and the 7th degree of the scale. So we have to be careful with them. Now then, maybe come up again. But you see, really what I'm writing now is nothing to do with a canon. It's a free moving part, but I'm trying to make it sort of work contrapuntally with this lower part. So how about something like that? Okay, so how does that fit together? Well, just before we think about what it sounds like, you know, I've got to make sure that that upper part I'm writing has got kind of melodic interest, rhythmic interest, and it fits with a harmony. So you can sort of see there's some design in that, hopefully. You know, these 4 descending notes are mimicked here with these 4 descending notes, aren't they? So there's some kind of stability about the thing. We've got enough rhythmic variety within that. We've got some shape in the melodic design of it. It's contrasting with the left hand. It's also engaging in some of the same figures. Okay, so how does all this actually go together harmonically? Well, all this is really a chord 1 in C minor. So harmony, passing, harmony, passing. Then really this is an accented passing note onto the B, which is possibly something to do with the chord 7 in first inversion, because that would work nicely as a replacement passing 6/4. This is going to work as a chord 1 initially in first inversion, and passing note, you could say that's a lower auxiliary and this is a passing note, or you could say, well, there's a sort of hint of chord 5 about that. Then this is all chord 1, harmony, passing, harmony, passing. Then this is all looking like chord 5, and in fact it carries on looking like chord 5. This is making it into a 5/7 before we move on, isn't it? But harmony, passing, harmony, passing, harmony, passing, harmony. You see, all these notes have got to be justified as chord tones, harmony notes, or inessential notes, non-chord tones. Then here, you know, what's going on here? Well, we end up with chord 1 in first inversion, and then there's a sort of, the chromatic touch enables us to have a sort of implied secondary dominant to F minor there, because we're sort of going 5 in first inversion to 1 in F minor. But F minor is chord 4 in the home key of C minor. Then there's another sort of secondary dominant technique there, where we're going 5 to 1 in G major. But of course, the chord of G major is chord 5 in C minor. So even though canon encourages us to think in a linear way, we've also got to think harmonically. Okay, how does all this come out in the wash? Okay, it's just a snippet of what could easily be a much longer canon. But I hope what I've done here is enough to demonstrate, well, what is canon by diminution? What does it mean? How do we go about writing it? And what the issues are about writing canon by diminution and the impact it has on the rhythm. And then once the upper part, or the first part that sounded has sort of run out of steam, then how you write a free part that fits with the other one, that belongs to it melodically and rhythmically, that makes harmonic sense as well. There's just a start of how you would write a canon by diminution. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, let me invite you to visit our website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. One of the things that people often struggle with is how do I translate all this harmonic thinking into being able to hear the sounds, do the stuff under my fingers? Well, go to the website, click on courses, and then have a look at our keyboard harmony course. That's very much tailored in terms of how do I think harmonically under my fingers, and that will get you to write better harmony and better counterpoint. So when you come to write your canon, you'll be sort of thinking a bit more under your fingers. If you're a keyboard player, especially, that's helpful. If you've got limited keyboard skills, don't let that worry you. Take it as an opportunity to enhance your keyboard skills and thinking practically about your harmony and allowing yourself to hear what's going on as well. Lots of other things on the website there, courses, maestros. Have a look and see what's there for you. www.mmcourses.co.uk.